What's up everybody, back with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at Soulrender Dormazain on Mythic difficulty. I'll be going over most of the mechanics, how to deal with them, and our overall tactic for this fight. Now setup wise, you want 2 tanks, 5 healers, and 13 DPS. A Warlock will help a lot due to gateways, and if possible you really want 1 Necro Blood DK with the Grippy Lego, Grip of the Everlasting, or 2 Necro DPS DKs. I will go over this more in a bit, but having access to a lot of grips is just so good on this fight. It's for sure doable without, but a lot harder. Unlike hopping over to my Twitch, which is super easy. So with that said, what's new for Soulrender on Mythic? Well, the big one is the Moss-Worn Overlord, which is a new ad that spawns with the 4 agonizers. Now this ad cannot be CC'd, and all it does is make any agonizers within 16 yards of the Overlord immune to CC and increases their damage done by 200%. Meaning, if an ad is within 16 yards of the Overlord, you cannot interrupt it, which is not amazing. You now also only have 25 seconds to deal with the chains or shackles, so you can't delay them by a lot, so you will have them overlap with abilities like cones or ads. And on top of this, the debuff a player gets after breaking a chain now lasts for the entire fight, so you will need 3 new players for each set of chains until the boss dies or you run out of players and you die. And apart from that, everything is scaled up a lot, mechanics happens more frequently, the usual. Now with that said, let's break down the encounter a bit, starting off with those pesky ads and the Overlord. Cue the picture! Now first of all, you want to assign CC for each of the agonizers like Paralyze, Imprison, etc, so they don't cast or move. For this, we just had 1 mark per pie slice, if you will, and assigned a player to each mark. Now keep in mind that the ads don't always spawn in their pie slice or at the mark, so what I did for my ad was just keep track of its number. I was green mark, which for us is the second ad going from the left, so anytime they spawn I just insta went for the second ad to the left rather than the mark. Now on top of this, the Overlord ad always spawns in front of one of the agonizers, but a few seconds later, and you can see where it's going to spawn before it spawns from the white flashy stuff. So you want to CC the agonizers as soon as they spawn, and if possible always knock away the ad or ads that are next to where the Overlord is about to spawn. Now this is just to prevent trigger happy DPSers from breaking the CC when they go full ham on the Overlord. And on that note, avoid using anything that could possibly cleave and break CCs. The knockback is just to make it safer, not foolproof. Now full nuke on the Overlord, and players with brand needs to be on top of the Overlord as soon as he spawns. The brand debuff stacks both on players and the ads, you want to make sure both of them overlap the ad but not each other, as it deals a ton of damage. Same thing goes for when you nuke the agonizers, both brands smack on him. Having both of them on the ads increases their damage taken by 100% and deals a ton of ticking damage to them. So not having brands for even a few seconds is like skipping Bloodlust on an entire encounter. It is an extremely big DPS loss. Now if only details could show how much damage each branded player does to the ads, I promise people would min-max that. Think of the pad! Now as soon as the Overlord is dead, you need to turn your focus to the aforementioned agonizers. You want to stack them and burn them down as fast as possible, and this is where the good old DKs come into play. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have a Necro Blood DK with the Grippy Lego, they can pretty much handle all of this themselves by using their regular grips and mass grip for one wave, then grips and Abomination Limb for the next one, alternating every wave. So depending on how the ads spawn, you want to grip 1 or 2 of the agonizers into the other agonizers, then mass grip on boss or use Abomination Limb. And Necro Blood DKs really make this encounter easier, which is why I'm playing Windwalker in this fight. We had our DPS DK go blood just for this encounter for that reason. Now if you don't have a blood DK, hopefully you have access to 1 or 2 DPS DKs that are Necro. If there's 2 of them, you deal with it the same way as with 1 blood DK, but you just alternate Abomination Limb instead. Now if you only have 1 DPS DK, they need to get the Grippy Lego, and players with knockbacks will have to help. And if you don't have access to a DK at all, it is possible to stack them up with Typhoons, Shining Force, etc., but it will take way way more coordination and above all time. Because the faster you stack them, the faster they're gonna die. Big brain. We also had players break the CC intentionally a bit before we needed to stack them to make sure they were grippable. Now lastly, as far as actually nuking the adds down, depending on your raid setup, you can either have one DPS carry all set of adds and only use CDs for that. Windwalkers are a prime example for this. Otherwise, you can have two DPS rotate cooldowns for the adds, like Hunters for example, to make sure they die in time. You don't want to have all your DPSers go full pad mode and hold cooldowns for adds. Sure, it's fun to blow them up, but boss damage is very much needed here. And on top of this, for the adds, like I mentioned, they can and will overlap with some mechanic. So here's our overlaps and how we dealt with them. First add, nothing with it. Second set of adds, you'll get cones roughly around the time Overlord add dies. Simply move into the safe pie slice and stack them up there. Same thing for the third set. Fourth set, on the other hand, can overlap with the dance, aka Tormented Eruptions, which is not great. The best way to deal with this is just nuke forehead. The faster you can get the Overlord down here, the faster you can start AoEing the agonizers. So if you're having issues here in making that DPS check, aka getting them all down before the dance, try having one or two DPS hold cooldowns for just a bit for the Overlord, preferably someone with high single target damage just to get it down super fast. And if you still have agonizers up when the dance starts, range should hard focus them and you need to keep them interrupted if possible. Now for the fifth set of adds, we got the Overlord spawning during cones and then cones while we were nuking agonizers, and the sixth set of adds pretty much the same as the fifth. Now how the cones spawn during these are a bit RNG. Either you luck out and the safe one is where the Overlord is, or you just have to wait and nuke the Overlord faster. With that said, let's talk chains instead. As I mentioned earlier, you will need players for each set of chains. In total, you'll need 6 set of free players. Depending on your overall DPS, you might get away with 5 sets of free, but 6 set is your end range, as you won't have enough players for a 7th set of chains. Now if you have a Warlock, you want a gateway going from the middle chain towards the entrance of the room, and you'll use this to break the chains faster. You want to have raid cooldowns ready for the chains, and you want to break them in a staggered fashion, but as fast as the raid health allows you. Since you won't have cooldowns to cover the full 25 seconds, it's often better to break them faster so you can do it during the cooldowns. If needed, you can stagger the raid cooldowns a bit during chains to give some more leeway. Our rule of thumb was first chain goes instant no matter what, so as soon as the chains are interactable, first chain player picks it up, clicks gateway and breaks. Second usually fairly fast after the first one, and the third one can be a bit slower depending on your raid's HP or other mechanics. And we also said if the raid is above 50%, just break. It will help a lot if you have someone call the breaks like chain 2 go, break third chain, etc, etc, as some players might not be comfortable making that judgment call themselves as to when it's safe to break. Now it's important everyone understands that these chains needs to break fast, and they deal a metric ton of damage to the entire raid when they do break. So avoid taking any unnecessary damage, be ready to health pot, use personals, etc to help keep up the pace of the chain breaking. And lastly, we have the Tormenting Eruption, aka the safety dance. We assigned each pie slice a number, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Marks works as well, but numbers works better for us. And we had a player call out each safe zone during the dance, and you can spot where the next waves are going by looking for the red orbs that lands where the waves start. So you can see which of the 3 slices will get a wave and then call the one without. We also assigned roars and wind rushes during this, which is mostly needed when you have to run really far, so from 1 and 4 or 4 to 1, just to make sure everyone makes it in time. Other than that, pop all cooldowns, bloodlust on pull, and nuke away. And like I said, have everyone just cooldown boss all the time, except for 1 or 2 assigned players that are on ad duty. And well, that's pretty much it for this fight. Focus on ad management and how to break the chains as efficiently as possible, and the rest will follow quickly. If you have any questions at all about this encounter, hit me up in the comments or become a patron or Twitch sub and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can find raid weakauras, healing notes, or get help with anything raiding related. Don't forget the usual stuff like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. I'm also streaming all of our progression on Twitch, so make sure to check that out. It's on Mondays and Tuesdays. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time on Mr. Painsmith.